So we were talking about this potential thing that's happening this week, the second tribunal.
I'll try and attend that if I can. It's Thursday, isn't it?
I think it's Thursday, yeah. And basically she got fired in a sense twice because she had the position and she got moved. And so I think she had to cover herself when everything was up and going, that she had to put everything forward. So when I saw Minister Hooper, as I've already said many times, he said, I can't talk about this because there's sub judice all over it. And I'm going, I had no idea. In fact, no one seems to know about the second tribunal. But this is where it's going to get interesting, is that what will the government do? Because it's the initial hearing, so they lay out their case, right? So you're going to have, obviously, Dr Ranson's team. Then who is going to be on the other team? Can it be the AGs, or will it be the lawyers that were used previously?
Well, it's a separate case. I don't know.
I don't think the AGs can be there. But anyway, nothing will be surprising us until we see what happens on Thursday. You with me? They've already put in some lawyers beforehand when they went to the second appeal last time round, didn't they? Because they felt that they were conflicted.
You don't want me to.
I was trying not to. I know.
You don't want me to.
You've done all that.
To go too much at the AGs. Other than going back to our first session, I think I'm somewhat disappointed that Tynwald, which was kicked out of play completely during that whole sub judice period when it wasn't, remember?
Yeah.
Why on earth members have not thumped the table and said, how on earth could we have found ourselves in this ridiculous position? And who was it? Was it some curious Tynwald rules that created this false sense of sub judice, or was it actually the AGs saying this was sub judice? Those questions have got to be answered by current members if they're going to get some dignity.
So they know where in future, when they're being told things that maybe they actually can talk about.
Can they challenge them or not?
Yeah.
I mean, they were so complex, so timid.
I've got to say though, Alf Cannon, when he was at Backbencher 10 years ago and did that interview, he said, he was talking about the government in terrible terms. He said he wanted the openness, truthfulness, honesty, all those things. And Mr Hooper is that person as well, because he sat here in the height of the whole thing and gave me a no-comment interview, basically, because he couldn't talk with the sub judice thing.
Yeah.
But here we are. We're now in a potentially, on Thursday, if they don't contest whatever is going on and just settle it, then Mr Hooper, and I just look back at his manifesto, he makes it very clear he wants open and honest, transparent government. It's at the core of what he says. So I will be expecting to hear from him when this is all out of the way, so he can finally talk and take us through exactly what's happened, because clearly if he was a backbencher he would be probably screaming blue murder at this whole thing. It didn't matter when you get inside. You've been in there. Yeah. Once you're inside Coman, it's a sort of mentality of all together, isn't it?
Well, I think it goes beyond that. I'm somewhat despondent at the moment over the way Tynwald's House of Keys is functioning, in the sense that people make these honest statements in their manifestos, but once they go in and once they get sucked into departments, they become sort of administrative muppets, really. They literally follow their departmental guides, and they're not there for that.
So who's running government? I've asked this many times. Is it Sir Humphrey
absolutely
territory? If everyone knows that TV show we talk about, yes, Minister.
Yeah. If this whole matter indicates clearly, then clearly it indicates that we really are in that environment, that the politicians are just followers of the bureaucratic process.
And the names I read out earlier, a fair few are still in positions. No one's moved. I mean, obviously we've lost the top man there, but is that what you think has to happen? Do you think there has to be changes at that level then to get rid of civil servants who are still in the same positions as they were when this all took place?
Oh, it's got to go. No, it's not a question of necessarily just changing people. I think the system has shown itself to be deeply flawed. I mean, I've long argued, and I stepped down from the Council of Ministers on this issue, that there needed to be fundamental change and reform. And the final time I went to the people for a position in the Keys, my whole modus operandi was reform, and it didn't get anywhere, and I've said this many times that I failed. But this whole issue now is showing how flawed our current system is. I don't think the people of the Isle of Man are being represented by their members. They go in, they become members of departments, and then they follow verbatim. They might quietly argue inside, but they follow departmental process. And our CEOs, stroke COs, whatever you want to call them, they are far too powerful, they're in control. And what better manifestation could you have of that in action? That the medical officer put a set of detailed professional medical proposals forward to protect the Isle of Man population from ending up in a situation where its hospital wasn't ready, and a group of completely non-medical people
I've also
overrode
their qualifications.
Overrode all of that, and the Council of Ministers completely misled, even though some of them knew exactly what was going on.
So Treasury, Coldrick Randall, who's now acting head, right, and he's made that video to take a year to change the mindset or change people.
Well, it hasn't.
And Alf Cannon said he needed a year. A year is now.
It's gone.
So what confidence can there be that things are going to change? This is what the public is saying to you and me, I think, all the time.
Absolutely.
There's this total feeling that there's not that trust in our government because you've got people, these gatekeepers or whatever, keeping their positions, not being flexible, not holding their hands up, no chance of getting a freedom of information request actually answered without redaction and delays. It's just incredible.
Some people will think of this COVID episode as exceptional from the norm. I would argue quite the contrary. I would say that this crisis has exposed the deep-seated weaknesses in our structural system that must be attended to. I hear and see no sign of that whatsoever.
How do you fix it? That's why I keep basically asking the question. How do you fix the situation to put confidence back to people who watch this in the Isle of Man and further afield? How can you put that confidence level back?
Whatever we do, we need to do something very significant indeed. But if you think about it, all three Crown dependencies went into a ministerial system of government, Guernsey, Jersey and ourselves. Guernsey experienced it for some time. I think they started after us. I think they followed us. But they went away from it because the political engagement wasn't there that in a way it should have been. Jersey went another way, perhaps rushed their fences somewhat. We've done nothing. We've just sat on our half-baked system that was never completed. And what has to happen, we have to find a number of ways through this. One of them is that the people of the island have got to believe in the future that when they vote, their will be expressed clearly on the floor of Tynwald. That's gone. I mean, well, we're almost like a mini UK now, the way our civil service works. It almost has a contempt for public opinion. It does what it wants to do. It considers its priority, and we saw it, with this very thing on the FOI now.
And I mean, our civil service has increased as well, which is another thing, but we don't know exactly where. But Jersey is cutting theirs back, and we're still increasing.
We've got the largest public service by a country mile now, and that's not been dealt with either.
Okay, so back to the tribunal settlements.
No, you asked me a question about what we should do, and I have been arguing this since 2015, and because Council of Ministers were not the least bit interested in it at the time, and aren't now. They don't want to do it. They're too comfortable in their cosy arrangements. I stepped down, but the government has got to go back to the departments delivering services to the people, and that should be their absolute priority. And these matters, which are out with their experience and professionality, the strategic matters, must be removed from the departments and placed in a way that allows really high quality professional strategic decisions to be made. And at that point, and I've only arrived at this particular view fairly recently because I've been so despondent about the whole situation, is that there may very well be a need for the people of the Isle of Man, if a new strategic route is required, that there is a form of referendums on the big strategic matters. Which way should the Isle of Man go on this matter or that matter? It's certain. the problem is, right now, these big decisions are being think about this, and I'll try and explain it simply. They're being left with the Council of Ministers, but that's not what happens. All those decisions, all those matters of strategic concern are appointed to a particular department. So it then goes to the minister of that department, who then obviously passes it to the chief executive, who's a busy person and will appoint somebody else. And so big strategic decisions are being placed and misplaced with officers who are actually operational. And all around you, you see the wreckage of that process, exposing itself for all the errors made. The harbour strategy, the £80 million harbour strategy, which was a disaster, never happened because it was just stupid. The massive overspend on Liverpool landing stage, the mess over COVID, the mishandling of the promenade, the repeated fails over the Lord Street site. These are all examples of where departments, mainly DOI, where they have been granted or allocated responsibility because that's what's supposed to happen, and have failed completely to deliver them. And the process just goes on. It has simply got to change, and change radically, because we're not heading for a very good place the way I see things.
So just to finish, then, the tribunal, I've just written here, obviously there was a potential to settle whatever, after they outline what their case is again.
And that was refused, was it?
Well, no, this is what we'll find out. Will they settle? We'll find out when we go to the tribunal on Thursday. But this is the interesting bit. I have it on good authority that the British Medical Association are going to be there. That makes it huge again, because that takes it outside of an Isle of Man issue. And this is probably what this whole story needs. It needs, like the Guardian's done a report on it. I know that, and I can't say too much, but it looks like there's massive interest in some fairly large broadcasters in the UK and beyond who are looking at this story, probably more in the whole, because the BMA have already said this is not an isolated incident on the Isle of Man. It's the biggest payment so far, but it's going on elsewhere. But in a story, you can see the damage that this is going to do the Isle of Man. I mean, it's just going to be huge if this goes to a bigger audience, to bigger broadcasters, yeah?
It takes the biscuit, doesn't it, when having failed once, government completely showed itself in the wrong over the first episode with Dr Ranson, that now there's actually a second. I mean, it's some going to find governments has messed up twice with the same person.
And to go to Thursday and hope they're just going to not do what they did the first time and have appeals and this and other. But
for goodness.
So, by the way, so she was fired from the full-time medical director, and then she was fired from the reduced position that she was given afterwards. So this is the reduced position that is being presumably questioned. And we haven't discussed it any more than we should do. Hopefully that we're not going to get slapped with any sub judice, because you never know.
No, we've just advertised the fact.
We've just outlined the case. We haven't gone into details.
The
second one, we don't know anything about it, so we can't be in the wrong there. With the first one is completely talking about. Anyone can talk about the first one, and they are doing.
Anyway, just to finish.
Wrap it up. Final thoughts.
The final thought is that it may take some time, but I think we're fortunate in the fact that Sandra Preston, the boss of Abbotswood, wants to tell her story when the time comes, and I hope you're there for her to be able to do that.
Well, I'm also down to give evidence to the COVID committee. I've asked to do it orally, because I think that's probably the best way with me to ask me a question, I'll answer it, so we'll see if they come back to us. My final thoughts, obviously the Minister of Justice in the UK is being flagged by the BMA to get involved in this, which takes it totally outside this Isle of Man inquiry, because they can't, as it's been pointed out, make anyone appear in front of it. It doesn't have those sort of teeth. Now, the Minister of Justice, it has a completely different setup. I should imagine they can instruct people to appear, which would therefore be Ms Maxson, presumably, as well. People like that who, at the minute, aren't going to turn up to be talked to. So, will this give it more credence? Will it give it more validity? Validity, yes. But my final thought is the freedom of the press, which everything about this, and the reason that we're both putting time and effort into this, and people, as you know, behind the scenes, who feel so strongly that the Isle of Man has to be seen to have good governance. And we all live here because we want to live here, but we want to live here thinking that everyone is doing the right thing.
The two things that are absolutely essential. for our democracy is an independent judiciary, which thank God we have, and they've shown themselves that again and again. And the second thing is a strong and confident, independent media. And it shouldn't be just down to you and me like this, Paul. I mean,
I've got to give Sam turn. Sam does a good job.
Yes, fair dues.
And some others do. And well, there's not actually a lot of other media if you think about it. But it's a question of keeping this story on the front pages, isn't it?
Well, I think this also calls into question, and it's not for today's discussion, it's another day perhaps, a complete review of Manx Radio and how it operates so that it can fulfil its role rather than being so dependent upon government money and how it behaves. And do you remember halfway through the COVID affair, the then Chief Minister of the time, not the current one, expostulated in Tynwald and how annoyed he was that there was some degree of criticism of his administration over the COVID matter because they got nearly £1 million subsidy. I mean, some of us, our jaws just dropped in Tynwald when he said that. But is that the mindset?
Yeah. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And over 10,000 people are now watching this channel who subscribe, which is actually only about 10% of the people who actually watch the videos. So it could be up to 100,000 people. I don't know if it's that many, but we're not going anywhere. We're staying the course, aren't we?
Okay.